You're listening to episode 8 of the Propaganda Report with Monica Perez and Brad Binkley. Today's episode is brought to you by Total Absolute Mind-Spinning Chaos. Bored? Turn on the mainstream media. It'll be total absolute mind-spinning chaos. On today's show, FBI Director Comey's letter to Congress. Trick, treat, or propaganda? The objectives to this relentless media PSYOP, and what to look out for. Here's Monica Perez.
This is indeed episode 8 of the Propaganda Report, where we tell you how the news creates the world, the perception of the world, and not how what's happening in the world creates the news. And it's never been more obvious to me than in this election cycle that reality is being created by the mainstream media. So this week, the big story was this letter that James Comey sent to Congress saying, or sent the Senate, I guess Congress overall. I think it was directed for sure to Dianne Feinstein and others. Actually, let me just say that the letter is where Comey is telling Congress that although he closed the investigation of Hillary into the emails behind Benghazi or whatever, that he was looking into whether she mishandled classified information, that something has come up that is making him consider reopening the case. And what came up was Huma Abedin, her aide, Hillary's aide's husband, Anthony Weiner.
Hillary's girlfriend's husband.
That's the salacious gossip. I don't know if I believe it. That's probably just another propaganda sidetrack topic. But this guy, so he was being investigated because he was sexting, I guess, or some kind of communication with a 15-year-old, which I guess for some people is still illegal.
Right. He actually sent a picture of himself laying in bed with his shirt off.
Is that when his little kid was in the background?
Yeah, his little kid was in the bedroom sleeping.
But he's just communicating digitally with this 15-year-old, whereas we're going to have to save this for another time. But what you sent me, Binkley, from those court documents of the case against Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes.
Where these girls were underage sex slaves. There were like 40 of them, underage girls that he had sexual contact with. He had co-conspirators, including at least his associates during some of these episodes, were Alan Dershowitz, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, all these guys. And the Ken Starr, who was Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer, among other lawyers for Epstein, conspired to have all this stuff brushed under the rug. There was no protection for the victims, none of that. And here is this big story about Anthony Weiner, who's been in the news before for this. There's already been a documentary made about him. And still this stuff goes on. Still he rolls it out. So I, of course, have thought for a long time already that the Weiner thing is a PSYOP. And and I will say, I have to point this out. I had been pointing this out already before this latest Weiner PSYOP, the latest elements of that.
So many Weiner PSYOPs.
It's the perfect vehicle for a PSYOP. So that it seems to me all of our news is coming from not sources, not evidence, not people, but leaked emails, all of it. Like I saw this pattern arise before this thing, and I just jotted down, this off the top of my head, all the sources of leaked emails. It started with Guccifer, don't forget that, a couple of years ago. Now there's Guccifer 2. There's the FBI through this investigation of the classified emails on the private server. Judicial Watch, once the FBI was not allowed had no reason to publicly release all these emails, Judicial Watch which is just a private blog, got a court order to have access to those emails to depose witnesses completely. I cannot see any basis in law for that. Then there was the Russia supposedly hacked the DNC. Then there's all this WikiLeaks stuff with the Podesta emails. And now this Anthony Weiner thing. I mean, you have to see some kind of bizarre pattern here of that all of our information is coming from supposedly by peeking behind the curtain. Like, wow, this must be the real truth, because she never thought her private emails would be hacked. Whereas there is a video of her from years ago with this guy. His last name was Paul. He went to jail, I think, for campaign finance fraud. He was a big donor of hers, and he had a fundraiser for her.
Yeah.
And there's this yeah, I know. It's definitely not his name. It said in the video, she said, "Oh, I never use email. I've been investigated so many times. I would never write anything important in an email." This is like a hidden video of hers. So this whole email thing absolutely smacks of a PSYOP. And then that culminated this week in this letter that James Comey wrote, which folds in the email PSYOP, which I have talked about before, with the art of ambiguity. So I'm going to read the letter, and I want you to listen for my feeling about this, that ambiguous issues come up just to stir up, they are focused on, created just to stir up conflict. So it started, I think the first one I noticed was the Zimmerman Trayvon Martin thing, where it was really, who was right, was really, you could take either side. Same thing with the Bundy Ranch thing. They were talking about federal land. So there is real ambiguity there. But even in the political realm, you have Donald Trump, who says kind of everything, and you can pick and choose. He actually says the opposite of what he actually says within days of each other. And that's always ambiguous. And then Obama was also ambiguous by saying nothing. So you could just throw whatever, you could project onto him anything you thought. So I'm going to read the FBI letter. Binkley, did you read this? Did you read the letter directly yourself?
I skimmed through it. I'm going to have to listen.
All right. No, it's short. Yeah. So let me read it to you, and you can enjoy the ambiguity. So this is James Comey, the head of the FBI, writes this letter on heading, letterhead from the Department of Justice, the FBI. It goes to the a bunch of committees. And it says, "Dear Messieurs Chairman, in previous congressional testimony, I referred to the fact that the Federal Bureau of Investigation, in parens FBI, had completed its investigation of former Secretary Clinton's personal email server. Due to recent developments, I am writing to supplement my previous testimony. In connection with an unrelated case, the FBI has learned of the existence of emails that appear to be pertinent to the investigation. I'm writing to inform you that the investigative team briefed me on this yesterday, and I agreed that the FBI should take appropriate investigative steps designed to allow investigators to review these emails to determine whether they contain classified information, as well as to assess their importance to our investigation." Now, if that all wasn't ambiguous enough, listen to this concluding paragraph. "Although the FBI cannot yet assess whether or not this material may be significant, and I cannot predict how long it will take us to complete this additional work, I believe it is important to update your committees about our efforts in light of my previous testimony." So let me just tell you all the things that I are wrong about this. We have no idea what's in it or if it's important. We have no idea when we're actually going to be able to look at them or tell you what we think. But we thought that we should make a public statement to the world, lighting a fire about something we have absolutely no idea. There is no way this is the normal protocol for releasing totally unknown information that would make a huge thing. And all over the Wall Street Journal were articles about how the FBI and Department of Justice really steer clear of anything controversial right before an election. They just felt they had to do that. The Department of Justice even objected to it. This guy works for the Department of Justice.
It's like saying, we don't really know any of the details yet, but we would like to make an announcement that the person you're about to elect as president could potentially be a mass murderer.
But
we really have no details yet.
We have we don't even know if there's just an envelope that's sealed, and it might say that in it, but it might actually say that she's not.
Evidence across the front of it. We haven't opened it yet. It just says evidence.
And we're going to open it. We just got it. So we were going to open it like right after we finished with this press conference. Like you can just. So I got a great email saying, I think it's from Andre, saying he. Obviously, other people feel the same way as at least I do. What do you think about the latest FBI email nonsense? I hate to get caught up in all the propaganda. I do too, because it's drawing us in on purpose, obviously.
Yeah.
It clearly means something and was done for a reason. I agree with that. A lot of people are saying they're just reopening this case to exonerate Hillary once and for all before the election and have Abaddon take the fall. But one, that makes no sense. All it does is damage Hillary. Both the story itself and anything happening to Abaddon, yes, is bad for her. I agree with that. This clearly wasn't a rogue reopening. Something this sensitive had to be approved from way up. I agree with that. And two, there's no way anything will get resolved in 9 days. Some people are saying it's to take attention away from WikiLeaks, which is total crap, obviously. Because the WikiLeaks is one of this long line of email psyops. It's so bizarre to me that they see a tactic that works, and they just churn and burn and churn and burn there's a lot of them that they'll dry up. Like this will stop as soon as it burns out and people are like, more email leaks? But this is literally the 6th or 7th email leak resource. So I agree. It's complete crap. It's definitely not to take away from the WikiLeaks thing, which is obviously also a psyop.
Well, I just thinking about that. I don't really think it hurts. I don't think it hurts Hillary at all, to be honest with you. I don't. I think it hurts her in the eyes of people who already don't like her. It doesn't.
Yes.
Reading through Facebook, everybody on Facebook who supports Hillary is saying, oh, they're finding a way to rationalize it into how they already perceive Hillary, and they're blaming it on other people. So it's setting her up to. It's not going to change the opinion of the people who support her. No, it
actually. When I did my very first show on Emailgate a long time ago, I said this makes her look like a victim. I mean, this is somebody who could be accused of murder, whose husband could be accused of rape. And they're saying, what does the C mean on top of her emails? Because if the C means classified, she's bad. And then anybody who's not already like in your Aldous Huxley's 20% of people who don't believe anything, and there's 20% of people who believe everything. If you're not in that category, if you're in the middle, which let's call them the independents, it's to say that the worst thing you can find on Hillary is whether she saw the C on the email or not, or it's ludicrous, because she's done so. The accusations that I would say have some validity towards, behind them, at least some evidence to support, are very egregious. Fraud,
right.
Murder.
Well, here's what I tell people whenever a new email thing comes out. I've been saying this for the past year. I've been saying, oh, wait, another new email release. Here's why this is never going to matter. Because if they are to arrest Hillary for emails, her reaction would be, do you know how many people I've killed? My husband allegedly rapes people, and you're getting me for emails.
Oh, it was like when Rick Perry and Michelle Bachmann had it out in a debate. She said, I saw where you got $5,000 to push Gardasil. He just burst out laughing. This was from like 2012. It's like, $5,000? You think I can be bought for $5,000? I'm not that cheap.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, just.
Wait a second.
Of all the times,
it's yeah. So I was thinking about this. Why? I want to talk about two things. I want to talk about what's the point? No, just real quick, let me just say about the emails. To do it this way, to throw the emails out as the source of information, what I was getting sick of was I would tell people this who don't want to believe that the mainstream media is full of whatever, made up stuff.
Who doesn't believe that, man? I guess I'm so used to it.
No, there's like, I guess I'm going to say millennials. A lot of millennials get it. And when I tell people like from above millennial in age, my peer group, they're like, oh, the millennials get it. You're telling me the millennials get it? I'm like, yes, the millennials get it. But people, especially like the baby boomer generation, they can't. And I mentioned this once before when I talked to these separate people in separate incidences, when I said, don't take anything from the mainstream media at face value if it's not backed up by evidence. And if it's like some source unauthorized to comment, you have to discount that. If it doesn't have a name behind the source, someone who's going to own that statement as true, you just cannot believe any of this stuff that's not in evidence. And these people threw their hands up in exasperation. If you have to actually back it up, you can't believe anything in the mainstream media. That's ridiculous. And I was like, yes, that's a great place to start. And It is a great place to start. But what I used to tell people was to go look at the articles, and anytime there was a source that was not authorized to comment and therefore did not have a name attached, you can't believe that. That stuff is there to not be true. But that was probably getting a little bit old. Whereas if you have these emails that are clearly the raw people, this is Podesta, this is Hillary, this is Chelsea. Like they had Chelsea saying, I'm concerned about this guy Brand because I have very high ethical standards and I think he might be leading my dad down the garden path. You know, I mean, that's just a made up, whatever. Seems to me it's a very convenient device, these emails, to get you to absolutely believe it as the raw truth. So if there isn't stuff like, well, we all know the Rockefellers are running the world or whatever, if it isn't stuff like that, then you think that stuff isn't even there. And if it says stuff like Chelsea has these high ethical standards, that's setting her up for a future career where she's distanced from her parents, you know, like the Corleone thing, like they want the kids to go straight or to seem straight anyway. I just feel like the emails are quite a device to change, to have plausibility in a medium that has lost all the trust of the mainstream audience.
Right, to provide a source where usually there is no source.
Yeah, but a source that's above reproach, that you can't possibly think there's an ulterior motive because this stuff was behind closed doors.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing it accomplishes. It accomplishes a whole lot.
Yeah, now I want to talk about that. Go.
Is one thing is internet control. This could lead to more internet controls for the government.
Great one. That's not even on my list.
It's just the more these things come out and the more our leaders, so to speak, are in jeopardy, the more they're going to have to calls for regulation, because they're going to say social media, everybody puts their entire lives on social media. 20 years from now, we're not going to be able to elect a president because everything anyone says is going to be put up as a headline. So we're going to have to establish more government controls over social media and over internet.
That reminds me of that clip I sent you of Obama saying that we need to have some kind of truthiness test. Truthiness, that's the word he used for the internet. And I also had a note about these emails, like how hilarious it is to suggest that the elites have no privacy. These poor elites, they can't even send privates to each other. They can't even send emails to each other without their privacy, which is not believable. It's not. Yeah.
And it'll be done in the name of privacy. So it'll be
yes.
Yeah, and that's what it'll be done in the name. More internet. Let the government totally control the internet, which I think they'll also use virtual reality as a way to help continue to make that possible. And it'll be so we can protect your privacy.
The virtual reality thing, when we talk about the propaganda report, how the news creates the world. Can you imagine when virtual reality creates the news?
Oh yeah, I've actually was making a video. I haven't finished it yet, but about that exact thing, because there was somebody who came out recently. There's stories about people getting sexually assaulted through virtual reality.
What?
And just the way the stories were presented, it's absolutely. Yes, there are trolls on the internet, no doubt about that. But the cases that are presented are it's not at all sexual assault. It's two floating disembodied hands moving around the air, and someone acting like they're trying to make you think.
Can't figure out how to turn it off.
Yeah, I mean, the story was like this girl was like, I was in there, and suddenly after killing all these zombies,
Okay.
the person who was playing with me, because you play with people on the internet, he turned and he started grabbing my virtual chest. And I'm sitting here going, you gotta be kidding. Both players they're a floating helmet and two floating hands, and there is no body there. So from his perception, if he was maybe he was trying to look for your chest. I don't know, because there is no chest there. But she was saying that I felt so violated. She goes, I screamed, stop. And I'm just sitting here imagining, because she was at somebody's house playing, I'm imagining being in the kitchen and hearing someone scream, stop, just dropping everything and running in there. And she was like, and then he was chasing me around. And then you just see this person in your living room just running circles with his headset on, going, stop, stop, stop. I'm like, take the headset off.
That's actually worse than being chased by a zombie. I was like, you go in there, especially in Atlanta, you think they're going to chase you by a zombie.
Right. But the key thing, the thing that they're establishing with this, and they're also doing this with the people who are accusing Donald Trump, because the people who are accusing Donald Trump, they're not actually presenting crimes. They're not even doing it for the purpose of prosecution. They're just doing it so they can get 15, 16, 17, 18, so they can say a high number. But
yes,
it's all based on subjective feeling. And that's what this VR thing is it's based on how the person who feels violated subjectively feels. So it's thought control, essentially.
That's interesting, because the subjectivism is an essential element of the fundamental change of our culture.
Yeah, and they can apply it to virtual reality, because virtual reality is a new realm that we don't have laws to yet, and it goes across international bounds. So any laws applied to it, they're gonna be subject to international control.
Dude, when I see the vision that all this stuff implies, what it looks like it's going to be, from the driverless cars to virtual reality to total surveillance to total war, it's overwhelming, and I feel like it's undeniable. But so many people who communicate with me directly from my radio show on Facebook and Twitter and email, I mean, a lot of people are just like, it's like my mom, when I tell her, like, I think Trump is fake, they're continually shocked that I think that's, like, you can't think it's that bad. I'm like, well, who do you think's going to win? I'm like, well, Hillary's going to win. What are you thinking? And it's so crazy. It's so crazy.
It's easy to get caught up in all the propaganda. I mean,
but the digital stuff is the scariest.
And Facebook and Google have been testing. They've been testing virtual reality stuff for the past couple of years. They're laying the foundations for it. It's going to be in every single industry. It's going to touch every aspect of our personal lives, because social media is going to be a virtual reality experience. So this subjects us to total control, thought control, to policing, to where we can commit crimes within the virtual reality world based on how we look or gesture towards someone. And it establishes international control over every aspect that virtual reality touches, which is everything.
Can I interject something a little? I have to just interject this little point from the Journal this week has to do with policing.
Yeah.
That I'll put this in the show notes, that liberal, I guess, like civil libertarians or whatever on the left, which I'm a hardcore libertarian, but there are a lot of people who care about civil liberties on the left. And that was the crowd that was objecting to the militarization of the police 2 years ago when I started talking about this. And in the article, it said that the people who in that category who thought very highly of the police leapt from 50% in 2015 to 70% right now. So and it's 100% a result of the black versus blue PSYOP that I have always said, and you agreed, has diverted our attention from the militarization of the police, the overreach, the coming of the police state. So all of this stuff just ties together in that I think you're really onto something with these email leaks, which I did not see, that they have to flip everything. So freedom equals security. Exposure equals privacy. Like keep putting a back door in all that's what they say. They're saying right. The FBI wants to put a back door in all your internet stuff so that you can be safer. But of course it makes you way more vulnerable, and they get everything. So these PSYOPs are designed to flip our natural instincts about these coming changes.
Yeah, exactly. Different interpretation of the words of the words we hold dear, I guess.
Yes. So what I'd like to do is what came out of that email and what was coincidental is exactly what we wanted to talk about on the show. And what we've just started to talk about is what could be the purposes of these PSYOPs, of the email stuff. My specific question, what I've really been trying to puzzle through, and you just said it, and I agree, there are many purposes, and multitasking is a big thing for these PSYOPs. They really want to serve more than one purpose. And if they don't, they can shoehorn it in and just act like it does. So, for example, rules for radicals. Saul Alinsky was the first one to say that. Like, even if your thing goes completely wrong and makes no sense, just use it. So, like, Assad is fighting ISIS. We're like, well, we have to fight Assad because we want to defeat ISIS. It's like, okay, that doesn't even make sense.
That's an improvisational comedy, Maxim, also.
Yeah.
Whatever happened.
Ash Carter's a great improv guy.
Yeah, Saul Alinsky was hilarious on stage.
Hey, who knows? Who knows if he was just 100% a performer or whatever. Yeah. Obviously, he's was designed to elicit a response. But these all have a lot of different, often have more than one purpose, and they can be manipulated even if they don't make sense. So let's talk about what the purpose is of the things that are coming out now, not just the emails, not just Comey, but all the stuff that's making Hillary look really bad right now. The Project Veritas videos, which we've talked about before. If you haven't seen them, I'll put them in the show notes. It's where people are getting fired for starting problems on purpose, starting fights at Trump rallies. They take credit for stopping the Chicago rally. This is James O'Keefe, but there's some evidence that the Koch brothers support Project Veritas, and the Koch brothers have also said that they prefer Hillary. So this stuff makes her look bad. I don't think it's going to sway the election. I just wonder why they're doing it. One obvious reason is to make the election look real, but I think there are a lot more tasks.
Yeah, the Cox brothers or
Koch
brothers.
It's pronounced Koch.
Koch. Their support of Hillary, to me, they have hated Donald Trump for like 30 years.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're who Trump battled in New York. They were like, one of them was, isn't that who Trump battled with the ice ring thing?
No. That was Mayor Koch. That's spelled exactly the same way.
Mayor Ed Koch. I'm getting them confused then.
Yeah, no, they're not related.
Okay.
No,
yeah, never mind.
The Koch brothers.
Wrong people.
That's totally fine. But it's good that you clarified it because people are going to want to understand this. The Koch brothers, I get this way. I like go off without explaining who people are. The Koch brothers were the guys who, there's several of them. I think their money came from oil and gas. They're known to be libertarians. Obama attacks them directly. But what they are to me, they support the corporatization of the libertarian message. So they kind of took over Reason Foundation, Reason Magazine. They took over the Cato Institute. These things that used to be hardcore libertarian outlets are now, a great example is the GMO thing. All those outlets who should have said GMO labeling should be voluntary said that GMO labeling, yes, should not be mandatory like the Greens want, but it should be banned. It should be banned. They were in favor. Reason Magazine was in favor, or wrote an article, gave a lot of attention to discrediting this anti-GMO reporters, all this. Anyway, I'm just giving an example of how these guys when it comes to libertarianism, some people think Ron Paul is the controlled opposition. I do not think so. I think the Koch brothers control the opposition, not because they're liberals, but because they're corporatists.
How do they get their money? Are they Coca-Cola?
I think it's oil and gas.
Oil and gas. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is these leaks, like James Comey in the FBI, he's going to work for Hillary. He works for the Department of Justice. He's not out there making Hillary look bad for the good of the country. You don't get that far up if you don't take your orders seriously. And like the Project Veritas. So all this stuff is coming out. And Trump saying all this stuff about rigged elections. All this stuff is coming out that on the face of it makes Hillary look bad. what are the purposes of that PSYOP? And I just might want to add, with all this email stuff, thousands and thousands of emails, I understand that's a huge project. I still think it's a PSYOP. I think these PSYOPs, I mean, when you think about some of the scale of some of these manufactured events, this fits right in.
Yeah, I mean, everything to a certain extent that we get on the news has either short range or long range psychological operation purposes. So
yes. So what are the tasks here? What's the agenda item? What are the agenda items for bringing this anti-Hillary thing, rigged election thing? You know, what this conflict is coming all the way up to the election. Is that, because that's not always the case. So a lot of times they know they're going to lose. Bob Dole, I think, knew he was going to lose. So you go right up to the election with this. Is it simply to keep ratings going and make the election look real? I think those are reasons, but
that's definitely. I mean,
is that it?
Yeah, they're going to keep generating interest in it, just like television drama. But one of the main things about like long range, like especially like election type propaganda, is the government gains legitimacy by getting compliance. So they really do want people to vote, because voting is compliance, which in turn legitimizes the government, and by keeping people interested and driving people to vote and to vote for this side or that side, that in a way it makes people have a stake in it. They feel they control the outcome. This is what it's a book called Propaganda, Formation of Men's Attitudes. It's like a landmark study on propaganda, but a large portion of it, he talks about this. Democracies must drive people to vote, because the people must feel, and he's even like, even though they don't have a say in it, they must feel like they have a say in it. Like, basically, he talks about how the government wants to do something. They want to do this and do what?
That's why democracy is such a powerful tool for totalitarianism.
That's exactly what he talks about.
Like, monarchy is not a powerful tool for totalitarianism, because every single solitary subject knows he's not the king.
Yes.
And he demands accountability from the king. Whereas democracy, if you're convinced that 51% of your neighbors are responsible, it's you resign yourself to it.
Right. And that's the whole idea of it. And it's all, the government picks what they want, then they have to shape public opinion to make the public believe that they chose it. And that's the whole idea. Yeah, but
I think that there is a layer of this where democracy itself, I get so much feedback. Like, we're not a democracy. We're not a democratic republic. We're a constitutional republic, whatever. Okay. I get it. I understand the nuances. I know a republic means no king. A democracy means you get to vote. A monarchy means there is a king. Constitution means there are foundational laws that you can't violate. I get all that. But when I say democracy itself is in the crosshairs, I'm just referring, I'm using the term loosely. I know Obama always calls this country a democracy, and I think that does have a psychological purpose, which is to get us to think that. I'm not saying that, but consent of the governed, as represented by us feeling like we have a vote, that we are ultimately the ones who are making these decisions through our representatives, that I think is in the crosshairs here, because although they would lose a powerful tool if democracy lost the faith of the people, but there's so many signs that they are moving towards a technocracy. And that is one of the technocracy means rule by experts. So in Italy, the elected prime minister or president was replaced by a central banker who was not elected. It was a complete subversion of democracy. It got very little press. It was only a couple of years ago. That guy might even still be in power. But what I see with this, like
how do they elect? How does the person get chosen?
He was simply installed. The guy resigned and was replaced. I don't even, maybe it was a parliamentary thing. I don't remember ever seeing any of that. I think it was the bankers who had them by the throat. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But I feel like this idea that the people cannot be trusted with the democratic process is the feeling that's coming out of the left for the Trump, the Trump episode.
Yeah,
Trump phenomenon is making the left say that things like foreign policy are just too important to be trusted to the people.
Right.
And then on the right, they're saying,
yeah.
well, it's a rigged election. It's obviously she's so corrupt. She's still getting in. And Trump said the other day, just a side passing comment, which shockingly I could not find on the internet, but I heard it on the radio. He said, I'm not crazy about ballots, but if you have to vote using a ballot, make sure it counts. I'm not crazy about ballots. Why would he say that? Is he preparing us to advocate for electronic voting? Is that what all this stuff is going to be about?
Run by George Soros, all the voting machines.
Doesn't he own that?
Yeah, like in 16 states, I think.
Yes.
But what you said a second ago about foreign policy, every single propaganda book, every single book that you read on propaganda or written by government propagandists like Walter Lippmann, Edward Bernays, and even books about public relations and democracy, every single one of them says basically the same thing about foreign policy. And it's this: it's the public does not have access to enough information. They haven't traveled to enough places around the world, and they don't understand the deep complexities of foreign policy, but they want to feel like they have a stake in it. So they have to be given something publicly to make them feel like they've made a choice on it. But in reality, they have no say whatsoever in what goes on in foreign policy.
I have two things on that. One is that is why you cannot have an empire out of the American experiment. Our founders knew, read George Washington's farewell address, you can have neither enemies nor allies. Our oceans allow us to have this experiment with freedom, but you cannot have a democracy that is also an empire. Right. People can't do it. And then the other thing, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I totally agree with that, because I personally, I haven't been to a lot of places that would factor into, like, I don't have the base of knowledge because I haven't explored a lot of the things that would be necessary to form like a well-rounded opinion on a lot of the foreign policy questions.
And you have no right to form an opinion of how the Syrians take responsibility for their own sovereignty. It's just, you have absolutely no right. Not even to save them. If you want to save them, pitch in, send money to the Pope who wants to save them. He's got billions of things. I know, but that's what I'm saying. He comes out and he tells Swedes to open their borders to refugees. Yeah. I'm like, you know what? Don't tell other governments to do this stuff. You are the head of 1 billion people. Tell them that you want them to, and then you go and send your diplomats to Syria and figure it out. Don't ask us as a government to steal money and kill people.
This goes back to something you were saying a few weeks ago. I mean, we've talked about it a variety of times, but that the problems and the questions of foreign policy in relation to us, they're presented in such this black and white. These are the enemies. These are the good guys. We have to bomb these guys. We have to help these guys in such black and white terms, which is not even close to the reality. But that's the way they throw the questions to us to give us a yes or no decision. So we feel like we have participated.
Yeah. Yes. The mainstream media frames this stuff. So there's no answer. I mean, that's why you could see with every single person on the primary stage for either party, they all like, well, obviously military action against ISIS is necessary. The question is, are we doing it for humanitarian purposes or are we doing it for self-defense? I mean, that's an assumption. The assumption is, I mean, Trump, Cruz, Bernie Sanders, all of them completely supported that. But what I love to direct people towards a summary review thing I wrote about Irving Kristol's book on neoconservatism, where he one of the crucial passages, which I repeat there, is where he said, I was sitting around with a bunch of Republicans and they were actually talking about what the people wanted. I started laughing basically and said, don't you understand your job as an elite is to take these nebulous ideas, these concepts people have about foreign policy and economics and to lead these people? The American people have no ability to assess foreign policy and economics, and they know it. So you have to lead them and tell them what you want. And this was like in the 80s. And ever since then, that is because we were shell-shocked by war. So nobody was going to be able to have a war after Vietnam. And he said, enough of that. You need to just lead them into war and they will go.
Right. Yeah, in this book, Propaganda, Formation of Men's Attitudes, when he's talking about foreign policy, one of the quotes is something like, men would rather give a stupid answer than admit their lack of knowledge.
All like men versus women, or
no, just in general, humans.
Mankind. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not trying to make you say
sexist. That was a
gender
sexist
neutral.
read.
I hate that.
The book was written in the 70s, so it's a little. It doesn't have the non-sexist.
No, I get it. Yes, that sounds right. But I might actually say that is something that men would do over women.
Well,
I think that's possible. Let's get back to some of the possible purposes of this PSYOP. And I just wanted to, can I just mention a couple of things that I heard today and yesterday? So these leaked emails make Hillary look bad. And the FBI letter from Comey to Congress seems bad. And I'm trying to figure out why this stuff is coming out now. What purpose does it serve? Because I'm under, I believe, my working assumption is that none of this stuff happens at government or at media, in the media level, that isn't part of this plan to get Hillary elected or to shape the future, the immediate future, or the policies of this country, or whatever it is. So one clue might be, we talked about it perhaps, and I think this is for sure, keeps people interested, keeps the ratings up, gets people to vote, makes it still look legitimate and contested and contentious. But yesterday, I think it was, Trump said when he was talking about this FBI letter of Comey to the Congress, he said, maybe it's not as rigged as I thought.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then today, I was just listening to Fox, and Kellyanne Conway was on a show, and the anchor, they were talking about, he said, your boss says that the media is corrupt, the reporters are corrupt. Do you agree with him? And she said, well, I don't think they're corrupt, but they certainly advocate. They certainly take sides. And the anchor said, and they don't hold Hillary accountable. So then the anchor said, well, all the coverage WikiLeaks is getting, all the coverage that the Clinton Foundation is getting, surely you must admit that Hillary is held accountable by the media. I mean, they wouldn't be covering it. And she said...
They're pretending is what they're doing.
Well, what Kellyanne Conway said, because of the Epstein thing, for example, which we'll talk about in 1 second, but Kellyanne Conway said, yes, when it reaches a certain level, when it's a certain pitch or certain egregiousness, whatever, yes, then they will cover it. So here we have both Trump and Kellyanne Conway telling us, hey, look, if it gets really bad, you hear about it. You're hearing about it. There's nothing more than that. It's not worse than that. Whereas the reality is the stuff that's really bad is exactly the stuff that does not get covered, like your Jeffrey Epstein stuff.
Right. Yeah, they cover, it's kind of the limited hangout idea, in my opinion. They need to put on the front to make it look like they are being hard on her, when in reality, that's actually covering up and diverting attention away from the truly bad stuff.
Totally. Absolutely. And it has to be plausible. But I was digging in a little bit to the Vince Foster, Monica Lewinsky thing. And because Ken Starr was one of the lawyers for Jeffrey Epstein and got a non-prosecution agreement that protected all of Epstein's co-conspirators, who might include Clinton, Bill Clinton, Alan Dershowitz, Prince Andrew, all these people. This is Ken Starr, who supposedly, or who was the special investigator against Bill Clinton, getting an impeachment against him for the Monica Lewinsky lies and sex. But the original investigations there were around the Vince Foster suicide that really looks like it was a murder. So the Monica Lewinsky thing itself was a diversion from something much more serious, potentially.
And something about that real quick. We've gotten access to some of the court documents for the Jeffrey Epstein case. And another one of the things that was interesting is that a lot of people evaded their subpoenas. A lot of people that were gonna get questioned, and one of them in particular was a woman Giselle Maxine or I can't.
Oh, Maxwell.
Maxwell, that's right.
Yes, her father was a big, I think he was a media guy. I believe he committed suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he committed suicide. And I think they have Mossad connections.
She gave the reason that she gave for not being able to respond to her subpoena or her deposition was that her mother was ill and she was out of the country. And the date that I believe her deposition was supposed to happen, that she was claiming she was out of the country because her mother was ill, was the same day that Chelsea Clinton got married.
I'd never heard that.
She's photographed. Yeah, this was in the court document. She's photographed.
I saw that coming. Oh my god.
The photo, but like I didn't realize that was actually when she was supposed to be getting deposed.
Yes, I've seen that photo too, and this is the first I've heard of what you're saying. But I was thinking, what is the only date you could possibly know where she is? And exactly. I remember that Chelsea Clinton picture.
Right.
But she was Epstein's procurer. She was one of the people who got the girls, lured them to Orgy Island.
Right. And for those who don't know, in a plea letter to help him get a sweetheart deal, Epstein says that he helped start the Clinton Foundation. And
he's a member of the Council of Foreign Relations. He's a member of the Trilateral Commission. And the document that you're talking about, which I read, it's Ken Starr, it's all these big guys. They're conspiring with the FBI to suppress victims' rights and actually, and they're naming as the victims the procurers. So the defendants, they're switching to make them into victims so that they don't have to notify the real victims. It's really unbelievable.
Yeah.
And there's some suspicion that I've read that because of Epstein's very high connections, that he actually, the Lolita Express stuff was in itself a kind of front operation to get information from these guys by using these girls.
Yeah. I mean,
so that's why they got to protect him, but it goes deep. So yes, I wouldn't be surprised if the Clinton Foundation I'd be surprised if they didn't have those kind of real deep state connections.
Yeah, and that's why all the stuff about the Clinton Foundation to me is just a joke unless that stuff is brought up.
Yeah. Yes, right. So that's the thing. That's why these things are really, when the rubber hits the road, people are not going to run away screaming from her having a private server, which she obviously isn't going to do anymore, Yeah. So let's talk about a few other possibilities. One thing I noticed in the paper, they were saying that having this kind of investigation ongoing, maybe it was Trump who said it. I definitely read it by actual reporters. This is unprecedented. And maybe technically the details are unprecedented, but people, I don't know if I've ever...
Everything's unprecedented.
In this one, right. But this isn't actually, because Watergate, people don't realize this. Watergate was where these guys broke into the Democratic headquarters during the election, before the election. And Nixon was projected to win by a landslide, and he did win by a landslide. There was absolutely no reason for him to want that. He didn't know about it. Widely regarded as a coup to get him removed from office. And when they did it, it was when it was discovered, obviously was before the election, because it was about the election. It was completely exposed, reported on, and Nixon still won by a landslide, only to be replaced later, not by his elected VP, but by a VP that was installed, Gerald Ford, who had actually also been on the Warren Commission, by the way. So
say that again, it cut out.
Gerald Ford was on the Warren Commission. He invented the magic bullet theory. And Nixon had...
Now, what is the magic bullet theory again?
Where there was one bullet that went through JFK and also hit Governor Connolly. And then that... so Ford was super, super deep inside, but Nixon was deep inside too. He just wasn't a taker of orders like Reagan and JFK. I mean, these are people they want to get rid of because they're on the inside, they know everything, and then they start to get like, hey man, I'm a man, you can't tell me what to do, I won this office. So not only was Nixon taken out, but his elected VP was taken out, and then Ford and Nelson Rockefeller were installed. So I'm just saying, I don't think Hillary's getting taken out after the election. I don't think this is a way to get Tim Kaine or somebody else in office. It might be.
Tim Kaine's crazy. They might really, he'll start Tim Kaine will commit mass murder in a second.
Well, they're all going to do that. They're all going to do that. It's going to be World War III for sure, or something like. They're definitely going to kill people, innocent people in the Middle East. That's for sure.
I mean, that's what's coming.
But don't forget
World War III.
What?
World War III. That's what's coming with Hillary.
It might not really look like World War III. It might just be a complete devastation of the Middle East. It might look like World War III, and with all the Russia stuff, it looks like that. Yeah. And world wars are the stepping stones to world government, because they say you can't live in a state of anarchy. But don't forget, there was a very long-running Secret Service PSYOP where the Secret Service is being presented as incompetent over and over again over the years. So just bear that in mind. Like, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop on that. And I just don't know if Hillary will, I believe she'll be elected, or I believe she will be installed, elected, selected, however you want to say it. But maybe there is something to this stuff where she then gets replaced by somebody who wasn't or could never be actually elected. So let's talk about other reasons behind the unprecedented nature of this election cycle. What are the purposes? And one thing that leapt out at me, or whatever, I put the pieces together when I took an Uber the other day, and the driver was a guy my age who obviously had immigrated from Mexico. And he said that in Mexico...
Did you get assaulted?
He did tell me that he was a rapist, but he was reformed.
He's giving you foreknowledge, like you have to do in the virtual reality world. You have to clarify, I'm not here to rape you. I'm only here to kill your player.
Oh, that's hilarious, because my son was reading to me this fake Craigslist ad, which just cracks me up no end. It's a guy, and his tagline is, "I will not murder you." It's like, go out on a date with me. I will not murder you. I like to dig holes and sharpen tools, but it's not because I guarantee you will get home at the end of the night. I'm like, what?
It's really taking all the excitement out of a Craigslist date by doing that.
I was like, hey, kids, have you ever seen anything like that? Don't believe it.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. That's definitely, this guy was a super nice guy. I would be very surprised if he were a rapist. But he was saying how the campaigns in Mexico are like that. They're like circuses. And a friend of mine's Brazilian, and she was saying how one of their senators, was a clown, like a face makeup circus clown. And I mean, so I was like countering with Al Franken, who was a SNL writer, a Saturday Night Live clown. But this one upped me with the Brazil. And then this guy was saying that they're absolutely circuses. So I was thinking that one of, election spending is way down. I feel like this is a transformative moment for our campaigning too, in a multifaceted way. One is they're making the campaign descend to where it's not serious and it's not expensive, and they can use the circus element of it as content for the mainstream media, get ratings up, get the commercial, the ad sales, make us pay for our own indoctrination, and that this is a result of the fact that we basically have one party now. It's as if finally, it's always been like this in a way, but I feel like it's actually on the table now, where like the mafia, supposedly, they were all fighting it out on the corners. And then they said, hey, man, we need to form a coalition here. Why waste our money? Or it's like when companies price fix. Why spend our money on competition when we could cooperate, make the pie way bigger, and just pretend like we're competing? So if they do it that way and they really control it at that level, like we have a real oligarchy here where like Rupert Murdoch is in on it with John Boehner and David Axelrod or whatever, I'm just saying, if they do it like that, they don't have to waste their money on that campaign. They can actually make money with this circus that we're being delivered. And it dumbs the whole thing down. So like, if you looked at this from outside, you think of Hillary as like a serious person, Trump is a businessman. But what if like from the outside or in retrospect, you look back and thought of it as like Dumb and Dumber, like it was a movie, like that's what it's really here. And that's that thing I've been talking about, the total merger of content and the commercial. The content is also a commercial.
Yeah. I mean, the circus aspect of it is that's how, I mean, unfortunately, that is kind of where we've come to, because there's so many distractions in society that to even get our attention, everybody has to propagandize us, even people that we might support, even people who might have our best interest in mind, simply to get our attention and leave memorable impressions on our mind. They have to propagandize us. Otherwise, it's boring and we change the channel, or we go check social media, or we go check Twitter. So we have set up this society where the only way people are going to get our attention is by putting on an elaborate, overdramatic show.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think it's a function of this, what has been revealed over the decades, the dumbing down of America, that we've been intentionally robbed of critical thinking. Like the senator's kids and Obama's kids go to these elite schools where they know darn well not only critical thinking, but the art of rhetoric, of influence, which has been deliberately excised from modern education. That
they
rhetoric.
know 3 languages by the 5th grade in those schools. People don't realize Obama went to a school in Hawaii, a private school. It's like $50,000 a year now. Back then, I don't know what it was, but
and look at the list of alums. Yeah, 2 of those languages are Greek and Latin, so they're going to learn. Really, it's true. So they have a whole different world, but we are being, sheepized.
Right. Yeah. I know. I totally agree. I think another result of this election cycle is. It's going to be a psychological study in using social media as the new emerging form of communication, which goes back to that try to gain control of the entire internet. And so social media there will be studies done on this election. There already have been in the past couple, but the ability to mobilize a crowd through Facebook and through Twitter and through all the forms of social media is something that is going to be studied and will be implemented in the way that politics are handled from here on out.
And it's not just the studying; it's also the data. So you've got like that Cambridge Analytics or Analytica, whatever it's called, was working for Cruz. Now it's working for Trump. I mean, they're collecting data, they're analyzing data, they're paid as consultants because they are telling you how to manipulate it, how to use it. But they are really, I think, whoever owns that is going to be paid off in spades.
Oh, right. Yeah. Social media is, again, I can't remember who said it, but it's a self-generating intelligence dossier. That's the best way that I've heard.
Self-generating. That's what's so funny. There's a fake news clip video where the guy, it's like the FBI guy or CIA guy, might have mentioned this before, where it looks like real news, and he's just testifying before Congress, and they're saying, did you create Facebook to get people to tell you everything about themselves? He said, no, but it's amazing. It's people send us all. I mean, we use it now, of course, but they just send us the most intimate details of their lives, pictures that aren't even legal. I mean, stuff that we could never, ever get. They voluntarily dump everything about themselves into this vat. We can hardly keep up with it.
Right. It's the whole, like, Facebook is it's the whole idea of if we don't even, I mean, we do, but we don't even think about it when we're using these social media outlets. Is somebody might say, ask you for your social security number, and you'll be just offended by it. And then you'll go on Facebook and be like, I can't believe they tried to get me to give them my social security number, which is the exact same thing as my birthday. And it's just like,
right. And or your birthday. Like, I'm not going to tell you how old I am. Like the women who put that video up that triggered the Charlotte riots, where they were being interviewed by the mainstream media, which was reporting it. It was on Fox. It was referred to on Fox News. And she said, he's my brother. The victim is my brother. They said, what's your name? She said, I'm not giving you my name. It was like, if you're...
What proof that you're his brother? I'm not giving you proof.
And she's uploading it to Facebook. And if she is his sister, surely her name will be a matter of public record pretty quickly, especially if she's uploading, these videos. If she wanted privacy, I'm saying, I would think Facebook live streaming is not the way to get it.
No privacy there.
I want to make a couple of other points while we're on this subject of the one party. The one party now, there were a couple of articles in the Journal this week, which I will link to. One was, it was the way I looked at it, I think I sent them to you. One was Hillary is a Republican, and the other was Trump is a Democrat. It was, it didn't say that, but it was like, this election shows foreign policy mixed up, where Hillary's the hawk and Trump is the dove. And then another article was the imperial presidency will thrive under either party. Tim Kaine wants to block the AT&T merger, but so does Donald Trump. And so here they are doing, they're crossing over on the parties. The parties are kind of merging into one party ideologically, as well as I think behind the scenes. Yet the divisiveness has reached a crescendo. It's absolutely the most divisive, most polarized. And that was that's part of the PSYOP of the divisiveness, of the deplorals, of the identity politics. So where it's not ideological like it was with the Tea Party and Obama's socialism, it's purely identity. It's purely devoid of that ideological stuff that made the Tea Party and the Ron Paul revolution a threat to the establishment. Everybody can deal. And that also was in that Irving Kristol book where the people will demand a conservative welfare state, he called it. So now you're creating on the right the subgroup that's going to demand, I want mine. They're going to advocate for bigger government and in the name of them getting there. So it's highly polarizing, highly divisive, but it's not ideological anymore. This is a turning point for that. What it is it's identity. And that's where you get why they needed to create the deplorables, among other reasons. And if it goes according to plan, and at the same time they're neutralizing the Libertarian Party by letting Gary Johnson blow himself up under the tutelage and guidance of the CFR Hillary shill, William Weld, if this all really works the way it looks like they're trying to make it work, it will really be a totally fundamental transformation of at least the anti-collectivist true American element that existed in our politics, I think, until now.
So you mean the national, as opposed to collectivist, globalists versus nationalists? Is that what
No, I'm saying the American experiment is individualist. So there's I think it was the Norman Dodd interview for the Reese Commission. Well, it was with G. Edward Griffith?
Okay, so the individual versus
Griffin.
The collective. So people.
Yeah. So a PSYOP that started 100 years ago at the Carnegie Endowment, among others, was to transform American society from having an individualist framework of individual liberty, economic and personal liberty,
right,
to a collectivist framework where essentially controlled government. That was
collectivist, because I had some people ask me about this recently. Is collectivist is you put the collective, the group, before the individual.
Yes, it all has its origins. I read a quote once that said, all ideas, something like this, all ideas are Greek in origin. I'm like, what? I totally didn't get it because I'm not classically educated. But I would say morality and politics basically can be, at least right now, be distilled into Aristotle versus Plato. And Aristotle said morality and therefore politics must rest in the individual. And so that's why the Catholics embraced Aristotle, was that it's all about free will and personal responsibility. Whereas Plato said the most important unit is society itself, and the individual can be sacrificed to that. And the philosopher king or whatever, that system will designate your best role for the good of society.
Right.
And that's a fundamental moral, that is the left versus the right in this country. What irritates me is that in this country, we established this country, the foundational, if you believe that you can take anything at face value, Thomas Jefferson wanted individualism, let's say. And that was our experiment. Sweden liked collectivism, and it worked for them. I'm not even saying I don't advocate for it, but that tiny country with the same culture, the same norms, same values, they wanted to have collectivism and it was working for them. We wanted to have individualism and it was working for us. Look at the 19th century American growth. The wealth gap was low, not high. Then that's not okay. So we got infiltrated. I think it started with Lincoln, being influenced by kind of Bismarck's Germany or whatever, this idea of collectivism where we have to keep the Union together at any cost, and the Constitution, individual rights be damned, we need to save the Union. He brought that here, and it's taken off ever since then. And then like with Sweden, a genuine good faith collectivism, which I can't believe I've even acknowledged is possible, but I think it is, was working. And that doesn't lend itself to world government. That lends itself to a smaller unit, not a larger unit. And that doesn't work for the elites either. So that's why Sweden is so in the crosshairs for immigration and that, because that will make a collective system fail. Like you can't have people...
Has to be shared values, shared religion.
Yes, because right. And if you have a super, super welfare-driven society for the lowest people, the like economically lowest people, and if they have welfare, they don't have to integrate into the society and share the values and everything. So they can just take the handouts, and then they don't even need to speak the language. It's really, really, granular. It makes the society not cohesive and underproductive. That's obviously a whole nother thing. But the collectivism and individualism, I would say, Aristotle, Plato, I can see that they are internally consistent, potentially valid, competing moral systems. I'm a total individualist because the power lies in the individual decision-making. Therefore, the responsibility must lie there. Authority and responsibility have to go hand in hand. So for me, individualism is the obvious answer, and just from economics, everything, morality. But some people have a softer vision of humanity and think that there can be, that we don't have these people who are driven to power who would exploit the collective. I think that's, been proven wrong a million times. But so, well,
yeah, it's also
what are we talking about?
Based on what you said, though, it's important. It's not just those two. It's Machiavelli. It's the people want the group, but the political philosophy that leaders have followed, and that other if you read Walter Lippmann, Public Opinion, he talks about how the founders of our country were fighting against the idea of this Machiavellian. The Machiavellian has been throughout history what leaders have used to gain and stay in power, and generally they tend to go towards a collectivist society because it gives them control over everything. But using Machiavellian tactics and his political philosophy is the most predominant political philosophy that leaders in the world have followed since the rise of civilization.
Yes, and I think it's possible that I'm sure Thomas Jefferson used the propaganda techniques of his time, or at least he observed that they were true. But what Thomas Jefferson was, I think, on our side as far as trying to get this individualism to pass. But what I'm saying about the one party now thing is all of the elites now, all the power elite, of course, know that central power, collective, all that. Even Irving Kristol in this article, I include the passage where he says there is no point in winning the elections. You don't care if a Republican wins if that Republican is, he didn't say this, but Ron Paul, because then you can't do anything. There's no power there. So promise the people whatever you want to promise them, but make sure you have big government, because without it, you don't have big power. And this transformation of the right, of the American right, is what I think this is all about. So the one party now thing, I'm not even saying the one party is Democrats. Hillary has the features of what people think is bad about Republicans. She answers to banks. She answers to the military-industrial complex. She does their bidding. She kills with impunity. She laughs about it. So this one party now, I don't think it's a D or an R. I think it's a C for collective. And you might say communist, but it's beyond that. And
I think Hillary's a communist. I think she's a total communist. She's actually
communist is below the highest level of what this is. Karl Marx was hired by capitalists to create a new society that could still feed the beast.
Well, what I mean is she's using communist tactics. She's studied, so it's still for her benefit and the benefit of the wealthy, the highest, or the people in power, the elite. But it's the communist ideology is what she has shown to pursue her entire life.
Yes, and it's informed by a lot of great work they did over there without the scrutiny of a free press or the kind of ethical pushback. You could think of it as a petri dish for like human psychological experiments. I think Pavlov came from there. Yeah. He did stuff on toddlers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I had what I was thinking was,
I should clarify for the listeners that I'm not 100% convinced that I don't know that I'll ever be, but I'm not 100% convinced that Trump is in on it. I think I told you my Russian spy theory thing is I believe that in order to, in fact, Machiavelli actually talks about this, in order to take over a system, kind of like, Ron Paul ran as a Republican for a reason. You have to change the system by entering into the system and changing it from the inside. And I believe that the person who is going to be able to transform the system to fight the globalists is going to have to play their game, is going to have to use their tactics, is going to have to know how to manipulate the media from the inside, is going to have to appear at the highest levels to be one of them. Almost, the best Russian spy or the best spy anywhere, you don't realize they're a spy. You think they're on your team. So I think the person who's going to be able to fight the globalist at the highest level is going to appear outwardly to a lot of people to be, just like them. I think it's really difficult to determine.
I wonder if that's even possible, that there could ever be somebody who could reach that level of success without...
Bruce Wayne, Batman?
Yeah, is that possible?
Is Donald Trump Batman?
Is he? That's right. Are you saying there is a chance of that? He's either in on it or he's not in on it. You're saying he's in on it and he's double crossing it.
You're breaking up. Say that again.
I was saying I thought the possibilities were that he was either in on it or not in on it, useful idiot or whatever. But you're saying there's a third possibility that he's in on it and he's going to double cross them.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess that's a good way to put it. Yeah. But there's also the possibility that he's trying to double cross, but they know he's trying to. It's really a deep, complex layer of propaganda.
We don't know. We're never going to know the answer to that. But I will tell you. We will know, I think, because the proof will be in the pudding.
We'll know eventually down the road.
Not that far down the road. If Trump comes out and continues to support things, if he supports things like the big war that Hillary is just walking right into, the Wall Street Journal had a big article about, the next president is simply going to have a huge war. Okay. So they're totally setting that up, which I saw coming. If he supports electronic voting, he said that weird thing about the ballots, the maternity leave, heavy antitrust stuff, heavy anti-trade stuff. I mean, he's going to play into all this. Well, the anti-trade thing, those trade agreements, I think, have to get done. They're the culmination of decades of plotting. But I think you will see if Trump supports the big government thing in an active way, or if his kids carry on that torch, we'll know he was in on it.
Yeah, I think time will tell, definitely.
Yeah. But I do not think he's Bruce Wayne. I just don't. That would be awesome. People. If
he was going out at night and just kicking people's ass.
Yeah. If he was just secretly like, well, Robin, I'm going to pretend. I'm going to invite him to my wedding.
Who would his Robin be? Would it be
Ivanka?
Ivanka would be his Robin?
Yeah.
That'd be kind of hot.
Didn't he say something weird like that once? Like, she wasn't my daughter. Oh, he said something like that once.
He said, anyway. About dating her?
Anyway, okay. I think we should probably maybe wrap it up, say what to watch out for. You got any of that? Or are you finished? Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I can. What to look out for next week is going to be. It's going to be telling about what it's going to inform us about what this email leak was recently. We'll find if we saw the breaking news story about they're trying to get them to release the details of the email thing. So look for them to give us a little bit more information about these email leaks, about the content that's within them, and look for them to not really harm Hillary all that much. And look for the next revelation about Donald Trump, which I don't know. It could be that he sexually assaulted an oak tree or something like that. It's going to be some ridiculous claim.
Ridiculous, yes.
Yeah. That's about what I got.
That's all you got. On this topic, I would say what to watch out for is, like I said, there were a couple of those articles in the journal saying, one quote was, a general said, an assault on Raqqa is needed soon, and the airstrikes continue there. The other article was that Hillary, or whatever the next president, will have to hit the ground running in Afghanistan. They're watch out for massive escalations of military action, troops on the ground, stuff like that. maybe even starting before the election, certainly before the inauguration, so that it'll be a fait accompli when that person takes office. But some totally unrelated things, just 3 quick hits on what to watch out for in the kind of long term. Fentanyl is in the crosshairs. I don't know why. I know there's some movements towards international chemicals regulations, so probably to favor our chemical companies. I don't know, but fentanyl is a thing in opioids that is being reported as killing people. They said it killed Prince. I don't really believe. I don't believe that. I'm not saying I'm for sure, but that just seems something's up with that. The Bundy Ranch guys got acquitted, which makes no sense at all. When you start something like that, take over public property, and somebody dies, even if the cop shoots the guy, that's felony murder. You went to law school. I went to law school. That they don't let somebody dies. The cop is not the law does not recognize the cop as the murderer. They say you brought that guy into a criminal situation. He got killed. You are the murderer. So these guys got acquitted. That just makes me think that the whole Bundy Ranch thing, which is a classic example of the art of ambiguity, you should keep in mind that I think federal land policy will change in a significant way that may not be well reported. It's probably going to fold into UN Agenda 2030. If you want to know, you can go back to Habitat 1, a UN paper that says private property should not exist in real estate. Anyway, and I think trucks and truckers will be the first one hit by the move towards driverless technology.
Right. So who am I going to yell at when I'm winding through the roads in Tennessee in the mountains and a trucker almost runs me off the road? I'm going to be swearing at nobody sitting in the front seat.
Correct. Well, you won't be sitting in the front seat either.
Yeah, I'll be in the back seat.
You'll be Googling something. You'll be watching Ren and Stimpy cartoons. You know, you're not going to be.
I don't even know what happens.
You're not going to know. You're just going to be dead.
Yeah, of course.
So that's nice.
That's what happens next. We have the driverless cars, and then we're dead.
Yeah. That somebody asked me the other day what scares me the most, and I said that the First Amendment's completely going away. Once Hillary gets the Fifth Amendment, the First Amendment is neutered. And then, but what I realized after later on when I reflected on the question, I thought actually driverless cars to me will be the mark of the final totalitarian. No.
I thought you were going to say the beast.
Mark of the beast. Yeah. All the license plates will all say 666.
Yes.
No,
with Hillary Clinton's face on them.
No, I just think that that's going to be the end of our independence. And I don't know. I don't want to think about that.
The end of our innocence.
Or the beginning, you know, they really thrive on dumbing us down. You know, I said to somebody, he asked me, what do I think is going to happen? Don't ask me what I think is going to happen. I'm going to start with Hillary winning. I'm going to end with, the end of civilization as we know it. I said, but she's going to take away the Fifth Amendment. We're going to get all this stuff. And I said, maybe that's why they're legalizing pot, because people need to be anesthetized through this process. And I think that's actually true. I think that is why they're legalizing pot, because George Soros is behind the legalizing pot movement. And he's not doing it because he thinks it's good for you. Or he's a libertarian.
No, yeah, anything George Soros is. But you don't think George Soros just likes getting high?
Yeah, and that he needs it to be legal in order to do that. He gets the good stuff, man.
I bet he does.
Fentanyl for him.
Yeah.
He can get whatever he wants. Anywho, all right, what else you got?
That's all. I'm good to go.
All right, this concludes episode 8 of The Propaganda Report with Monica Perez and
Brad Binkley.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have you had enough of hypocrisy? Have you had enough of the spitting spree? Have you had enough? Does it make you want to scream and shout? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Have you had enough of the rubber stamp?